Garry Paskwietz here with John Jackson to discuss yet another victory. The Trojans get a victory this time, holding on to the end against a school from Arizona, this time at Tucson to face the Wildcats. JJ, how much more of these games can you take?
I can't take many more of them. I mean, it's getting tough, especially down the stretch, but it's one thing that will teach our LA fans, make sure you stay in your seats because you never know when things can happen. So at least, if anything, the fans are getting their money's worth in terms of staying for the whole game.
Well, one of Steve Sarkisian's big points last week was somebody make a play. We need a player to rise up and be that guy who's going to make something happen. I think when you look at this game, you can talk two guys for the Trojans, Buck Allen and Leonard Williams. Let's start with Buck right now. What a game for this young man. Sets a career high with 205 yards and 3 touchdowns. His best run, I thought, may not have been a touchdown. It was when he was dragging guys 20 yards, 2 of them on his back.
Right. Well, Buck played an outstanding game, and, we're getting used to seeing that from him. The thing that, he just amazes me is the way that he can accelerate through holes. A lot of guys are good around the line, but he really accelerates through the holes. It looks like guys are going to bring him down and just runs right by him. To your point, though, Steve Sarkisian made a point last week that they have to turn some of these big plays into touchdowns, and Buck did exactly that. I mean, he had 2 situations where he's one-on-one with the safety. In past weeks, not only him, but other players on the Trojans might have gotten tackled in those type of situations. I think there was an emphasis on it in practice a week ago. It obviously paid dividends as he made 2 long runs for touchdowns.
And then let's flip it over to the D-line with Big Cat Williams. I don't know which of his play you want to put if you're ranking them. The forced fumble where he knocked the running back out of the game, or the 2-point conversion, which arguably, my gosh, what a big play that was.
Well, both plays I think are huge in terms of the determining factor of winning the game. My personal favorite is I love the way he when he hit that Arizona running back. I mean, you never want guys to get hurt, but he shed the tackle. He didn't have a running start, caught him right under the chin and just knocked him like he was out cold from the beginning. Ball flies loose, a big turnover for the Trojans obviously in that game. The 2-point conversion is the one that we get caught up on looking at because it's at the end of the game when the game's on the line and somebody needs to step up and make a play. That one was equally as important, but that one he made when he made that run play to stop the red zone opportunity for Arizona. That was big time.
We talked about the Trojans having to hang on at the end. And what we saw at the end was the Arizona quarterback basically having his way with the USC secondary. But there's a reason for that. Kevon Seymour out, Adoree Jackson out. Talk about what you saw there at the end.
Well, the one thing that with all those cornerbacks that went down, and the Trojans were already very young and thin at corner, from the start, it forced some guys into action that usually wouldn't be playing in that type of situation. John Plattenberg stepped in at the free safety spot, and he played well, obviously making sure he kept everything in front of him, which is one of the points of emphasis this last week in practice as well. And then you had Jonathan Lockett, who was one of our favorites, in terms of watching him play high school football, that he was able to come into the game. And you could tell he's still a freshman. I think that at the end of the day, he's going to be one of those shutdown type of guys. But he played bend but don't break, but and made sure that they didn't have any big explosive plays on him. But he's going to be another special one in the future. When all these guys become mature, we're going to be talking about this as one of the best secondaries in the country. Right now, they're going through their growing pains, and boy, there's been some growing pains in terms of games that are coming down the wire where these guys have to make plays.
Well, sitting here at the midpoint of the season right now, the Trojans through 6 games with a 4-2 record on top of the Pac-12 South.
Yeah.
Let's note that. If you're looking at key areas for the defense moving forward through the second half of the season, I think you have to look at the corner spot. We don't really know who's going to be healthy yet and how the mix is going to turn out, but you've got Mike Leach is waiting. Cal is waiting with their offensive attack. There are some quarterbacks going to be throwing the ball in the secondary in the future.
Well, the difficult thing about playing in the conference, obviously, is all these teams are running 4 and 5 receiver sets. So you have to have 4 or 5 or maybe even 6 defensive backs to try to stop them. The one thing is, and that's one of the reasons why they took Lockett's red shirt away from him even weeks prior to this, was now you have more guys that are qualified to play, but you have to try to keep them healthy. Mm-hmm. So Adoree obviously being a question mark is a major concern. I think that what's going to end up happening is the Trojan defensive line is really going to have to step up in this situation because you're going to have to get pressure on quarterbacks, but the only way to truly get the pressure on is when you start blitzing linebackers, which leaves your secondary in man-to-man coverage. Obviously a dilemma. You do not want some of these young cornerbacks in, especially early in their career. So it's really going to put a lot of pressure on the defensive line to stop the run and pressure the quarterback without getting help from the linebackers and blitzes. And more importantly, the safeties and the cornerbacks have to have great communication so they can play off of each other, especially in zone defense, because when you have guys that haven't played together, sometimes there can be some breakdowns. They have to make sure the communication is really on point.
Let's flip it over to the other side of the ball in terms of things to look at for the second half of the season. I think you have to be pleased, particularly in recent weeks, with the way this young offensive line is making progress, especially running the football. When Buck runs for 205, he's not doing it by himself.
Well, that's the one thing. We talked about it at the beginning of the year. The one major concern for this USC football team was their offensive line, because they had one guy, being Chad Wheeler, that was returning this year as a starter and starting in the position he played a year ago. Well, those other 4 guys and the other 3 guys that are coming in and subbing behind them are playing outstanding. Whenever you have the top running back or the rusher in the conference, that offensive line deserves some credit. They're doing things right. The good thing is also they're getting better every week.
And then let's end this thing talking about moving forward the second half of the season and give some credit to Cody Kessler so far. Threw his first interception in the Arizona game, but it was a play where he was trying to make a play. I like that part. He just underthrew the ball. But besides that, very efficient play so far from number 6.
Well, he has played outstanding. And the one thing is, I joked with Steve Sarkisian after the game. I said, he threw a pick. What was wrong? No, what's wrong with this guy, right? He's made it to, really, as a broadcaster, you get the feeling that he's not going to make any bad throws. And so when he did throw the interception, you're like, wow, was that even Cody even making that throw? He has been phenomenal. He's managed the game extremely well, which is the part I like about it best. He's been very efficient. And you also have to remember, he's a quarterback operating behind a very young offensive line once again. So the way he's handled the situation, got rid of the ball, managed the team, at the halfway point, you couldn't ask for anything more.
That's our report here from the John McKay Center. For John Jackson, this is Garry Paskwietz, ESPN.